Welcome to this video. I am Michael Völkel from PokerRanger.net and I will briefly show you what kind of software PokerRanger is and how you can use it to improve your game. I will not explain all the functions in detail because there are tutorials for that on the website. Instead, I will start with a short explanation of the tabs and will show an example of how to use PokerRanger. So for example, let's select a range for player 1 and another range for player 2. And we can also select some random flop. Now that we have ticked this checkbox, the equity will automatically recalculate anytime we change any of the ranges. So we don't have to press any buttons anymore to get this. So the first tab shows how often a specific player range hits specific hand strengths. For example, player 1 will hit on this board a pair 39% of the time. You can also view other hand strength as well, for example the top pair or the second pair, and we can hover the different ranges and get the number of the combinations. We can also tick the different ranges, get a custom sum, and we can use this and copy it to the clipboard, or we can use it as a new range for player 1 or player 2. I will show later how this can be of use. The second tab basically shows the same, but here it's for both of the players, so card removal effects are taken into account. For example, if player 1 would have a flush draw here, so only one hand, he would of course block a lot of flush draw hands of player 2. The third tab shows how often a player wins with a specific hand strength. For example, player 1 will win with 3 of a kind 92% of the time and with a high card only 29% of the time. This is useful because you can get the relative hand strength of a specific hand on a specific board. For example, a pair might be very valuable on a board with an ace, but it is less valuable on a board which is paired. The fourth tab shows the equity as well, but it shows it in one matrix so that you can determine the hand strengths of the different hands in one big picture. And the fifth tab shows how the equity changes on different turn cards. So the most interesting tab, I think, is the last tab. Here you can calculate the expected value and the fault equity of different scenarios, of different lines, on different streets. So to illustrate that, I would like to show you a brief example. I would like to know how often it is plus EV to raise a continuation bet. So for that example, let's select a hand of 9-8 suited for player 1 and another range for player 2, and we can select a board like King of Hearts, 7 of Diamonds and 5 of Diamonds, so that player 1 has a backdoor flush draw and a gut shot draw. Now we want to analyze how often it is plus EV to raise on the flop. The action which we want to analyze is done by player 1. The line is a raise, and we would fold to any 3 bets. And now we have to specify the dead money. So let's say player 2 has raised to 3 big blinds. We have called this, and there's also dead money of the small and big blind, so it's 750. Player 2 bets 5 big blinds, and here's a note which says that we have to add the bet size of player 2 to the dead money as well. So you have to be careful to put everything in here. Of course, if you use the Hold'em Manager import function, it will be inserted automatically. Now we have to specify what kind of hands player 1 raises. We can only select the hands which have been inserted above. So we can use this as an entire range. And we have to specify the raise size. Let's make it 15, which is 3 times his bet size. Now we have to state how player 2 reacts to that. In the case that he just calls his entire range, our EV is of course very negative because our equity against player 2's range is really low. But now we would like to see what happens if player 2 folds some of his hands. Now we can see everything is grayed out. We can't select anything because he calls his entire range. So we have to deselect some of the hands here. And those are available in the folding range afterwards. But we could also use the first tab, select player 2, and now we could say that he folds all of his high cards and also his third pair cards. Now we can use this custom sum, copy it to the clipboard, erase those ranges, and now we can insert it here so that player 2 folds all of these hands. And as we can see here, we can select the other hands. We can also use the blue button, which automatically determines the difference. And now we see that the fold equity of player 1 has risen to 58%, and the expected value of player 1 has risen to 4.55. So it is plus EV to raise on that board. We could also change some of the constraints. We could increase the raise size, for example, and as you can see, the expected value will change automatically. So this was a brief example of how to use PokerRanger to analyze different spots. If you are interested, try a free trial version, fully functional, and support us with any feedback so that we can improve PokerRanger. My name is Michael Völkel from PokerRanger.net, and thank you very much and have a nice day.